some limited legislative business getting done. The high point, however, was the discussion that took place on the constitution of the country, the occasion marking completion of 75 years of its working. What caught my attention during the constitution debate was the focus on the first amendment that happened in 1951 by the government of Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru. Prime Minister Narendra Modi highlighted how the First Amendment was an attack on the idea of freedom of expression. Let's understand why the PM said so.
1951 में जबकि चुनी हुई सरकार नहीं थी, उन्होंने ऑर्डिनेंस करके संविधान को बदला और किया क्या? अभिव्यक्ति की आजादी पर हमला कर दिया गया। और ये संविधान निर्माताओं का भी अपमान था।
It's an interesting story of multiple layers of contrasts and ironies. Barely a month after the Constitution was promulgated on January 26, 1950, two cases came up before the Supreme Court of India. One was in connection with the ban on the circulation of a left-leaning magazine called Crossroads. The ban was imposed by the Congress government of the Madras Presidency, fearing a communist takeover in what was effectively the Kerala part of the presidency, as the Crossroads sought to amplify the Marxist narrative. Its editor, Romesh Thapar, who was also the brother of Marxist historian Romila Thapar, approached the Supreme Court against the ban. Similarly, in Delhi, the Union Territory Administration imposed a censorship on the RSS mouthpiece organizer following a series of reports that the magazine carried on the migrants' crisis along India's eastern frontier. Refugees were trickling in following anti-Hindu violence in parts of what was then the East Pakistan and is now Bangladesh. The organizer asked some difficult questions, and the government passed the pre-publication censorship order. The organizer case too reached the top court, roughly the same time as that of the Crossroads. Both invoked freedom of speech and expression enshrined in Article 19 of the Constitution. The Supreme Court ruled with a majority of 5-1, scrapping both the ban and the censorship, holding that the two publications in no way affected national security, a premise that was used by the Congress governments in their orders. Though given separately, the verdicts were a severe indictment of the Nehru government on the issue of liberty of the press and the idea of the freedom of expression as enshrined as a fundamental right under Article 19(1)(a) in the original Constitution. Imagine the hegemony of the Congress under Prime Minister Nehru. The government brought in an ordinance to nullify the effect of the Supreme Court verdicts and followed it up with a proper amendment, which effectively sits as the First Amendment to the Constitution of India. The amendment introduced limitations on the freedom of speech and expression, imposing reasonable restrictions through insertion of Article 19(2) in the Constitution. Look at the irony. The First Amendment to the United States Constitution makes it impossible for the US Congress or even their president to pass any laws that put any kind of restrictions on the freedom of press, making it absolute in America. While in India, that paragon of liberalism, Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, under him, the First Amendment brought in limitations on the same press. It does not end there. As I mentioned, the Supreme Court decided both the cases with a majority of 5-1 against the Nehru government. The majority judgment in both the cases was authored by Justice M. Patanjali Shastri, and Justice S. Fazal Ali dissented in both cases. Months after the verdicts, the then Chief Justice of India, Justice Kania, died of a heart attack while in office. Nehru government opposed the appointment of the next senior judge, Justice Shastri, who was next in line as per the seniority principle. Prime Minister Nehru acquiesced only after the entire bench of 5 justices threatened to resign in protest. On the other hand, Justice Ali, who had dissented in favor of Nehru government, was bestowed post-retirement sinecures that continued till his death. His term was first extended by a year in the Supreme Court, following which he was appointed the governor of the state of Orissa. After this, he was made the head of the all-important States Reorganizing Commission, an assignment that came with cabinet minister rank. Hold on, it does not end there. Justice Ali was bestowed the Padma Vibhushan, India's second highest civilian award. Guess, in honor of him having dissented in the freedom of press case and then sent for his second gubernatorial stint to Assam, where he died in office in 1959. Talk of committed judiciary. It started with Nehru himself reaching some levels of brazenness under Indira Gandhi, as we know. Remember, it was a caretaker government. The first general elections were yet to be held in 1952. Pandit Nehru had people's heart and mind, but not the mandate yet. History describes Pandit Nehru as impulsive, impatient, impromptu. He was also imperious, an example of which was given by Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman when she asked the Congress benches during the same debate in Parliament as to why Bollywood greats Majrooh Sultanpuri and Balraj Sahni were arrested in 1949.
Majrooh Sultanpuri and Balraj Sahni were both jailed in 1949 itself. For what mistakes, sir? During one of the meetings organized for the mill workers in 1949, Majrooh Sultanpuri recited a poem that was written against Jawaharlal Nehru. So that is the level of tolerance, and today we hold our constitution in our hand, go about it and say freedom of speech. There is sense of fear in the country. Majrooh Sultanpuri didn't feel it, Balraj Sahni didn't feel it, but the history repeats when it comes to the Congress party.
Both Sultanpuri and Sahni were part of the left-leaning progressive writers movement. Sultanpuri is credited with converting commercial film songs into sheer poetry. Sahni's film Garam Hawa is still a benchmark of partition filmography. During a workers' protest in Mumbai in 1949, Sultanpuri recited a poem highly critical of Nehru's decision to remain part of the British Commonwealth despite independence. It was not liked, obviously, and an arrest warrant was issued against him. For 2 years, he dodged authorities by going underground. Arrested in 1951, Sultanpuri served a full year in jail as he refused to apologize to Nehru. Similarly, Sahni was lodged in jail for 6 months on charges of inciting violence while participating in a Communist Party rally. Imagine the imperiousness of Nehru that he did not heed his own warning. Back in 1937, Pandit Nehru wrote an essay titled Rashtrapati under the pseudonym of Chanakya. The essay was published in a Calcutta, then Calcutta, now Kolkata-based magazine, The Modern Review. In this essay, Nehru described himself as some triumphant Caesar who might turn dictator with a little twist. There's a reason why he might have felt a bit like Caesar. Nehru had been elected Congress president for the 3rd time that year. The Congress historiography and even hagiography projects that writing of Nehru as a warning to his own people against hero worship. The episodes of the First Amendment and Majrooh Sultanpuri and Balraj Sahni show he forgot his own warning. And you know what? The poem that Sultanpuri had recited had one line which described Nehru as Hitler ka chela. Now imagine the number of times Prime Minister Narendra Modi has been called Hitler, and not just his chela, and yet there are no arrests. Moving on, but staying with the Parliament. Principal opposition party, the Congress, kicked some dust on a clip of Union Home Minister Amit Shah in which he goes after the Ambedkar love of the opposition. What Shah meant was that the use of the name of the father of our constitution as a talisman by the opposition was not taking them anywhere. What it got interpreted as was totally different, and for a bit put the BJP on the back foot. Congress sought Shah's resignation and the ruling party doubled down. Prime Minister coming out with a tweet storm on the contrast between Congress's treatment of Babasaheb Ambedkar in his lifetime and the subsequent deification of the stalwart leader we see now. While the war on Ambedkar might not end anytime soon, it's a fact that Ambedkar was not part of the pantheon of the freedom leadership which Congress ecosystem promoted till he was alive. His frequent run-ins with Mahatma Gandhi, the Pune Pact, and the standoff over the London Round Table Conference is well known to the students of freedom struggle. Nehru carried those misgivings and included Ambedkar in his cabinet only on the insistence of the Mahatma. Ambedkar being denied a Congress ticket in 1942 general elections, Ambedkar being denied a memorial post his death, Ambedkar being denied a Bharat Ratna by the Congress are facts of post-independence history. It's also a fact that India's highest civilian honor, the Bharat Ratna, was bestowed on Ambedkar only in 1990 by the National Front government of Prime Minister VP Singh, which was in alliance with the BJP at that time. While the jousting match between the BJP and the Congress over the legacy of Babasaheb Ambedkar is understandable, what drew my particular attention during the same debate, however, was the use of slogan Jai Bheem, Jai Meem by AIMIM leader Asaduddin Owaisi.
निसार मैं तेरी गलियों के वतन के जहां चली है रस्म के कोई ना सर उठा के चले जो कोई चाहने वाला तवाफ को निकले नजर चुरा के चले सर हम जिस्म व जान बचा के चले बहुत है जुल्म दस्ते बहाना के लिए सर हम जो चंद अहले जुनू तेरे नाम ले वाले इख्तिदार की कुर्सियों पर बैठने वाले जो लोग थे और है वो इंटेलेक्चुअली डिसऑनेस्ट है संविधान सच्चा है जय भीम जय भीम आइन जिंदाबाद.
The barrister from Hyderabad is an astute politician and very open about his Muslim politics, just like the BJP is about its Hindutva. Let's look at some of the aspects of Ambedkar through his writings, which make one wonder if Owaisi has done even basic due diligence on Babasaheb. Ambedkar's thoughts on Muslims, Islam, and the idea of Pakistan are encapsulated in his book called Pakistan or the Partition of India. I shall quote extensively from the book to create a profile of Ambedkar for Owaisi's appraisal. In the chapter, Must There Be Pakistan, he says, India's unity is as ancient as nature. Within this geographic unit and covering the whole of it, there has been a cultural unity from time immemorial. In any discussion of Pakistan, the fact cannot be lost sight of, namely, that the starting point, if not the governing factor, is the fundamental unity of India. On Savarkar, Ambedkar, writing in the same chapter, found the Hindutva leader to be one up on Congress on issues of clarity with the Muslim question. Here's the quote. This alternative of Mr. Savarkar to Pakistan has about it a frankness, boldness, and definiteness which distinguishes it from the irregularity, vagueness, and indefiniteness which characterizes the Congress declarations about minority rights. Mr. Savarkar's scheme has at least the merit of telling the Muslims thus far and no further. The Muslims know where they stand with regard to the Hindu Mahasabha. On the other hand, with the Congress, the Muslims find themselves nowhere because the Congress has been treating the Muslims and the minority question as a game in diplomacy, if not duplicity. Unquote. Babasaheb had strong views on the Muslim sense of separatism and wanted the creation of Pakistan to be incumbent upon a complete transfer of population. He thought that any partition that leaves Muslims in India would not solve the communal question. He panned the social and political aggression of Muslims and worried out loud about the complete absence of social reform from within the Muslim society. According to him, the burqa, and this is important for the hijab activists of the Muslim community in India today, the burqa was the most hideous sight one can witness in India. Let me quote extensively on what Ambedkar thought of the impact of burqa on Muslims or Muslim women. Such seclusion cannot but have its deteriorating effects upon the physical condition of Muslim women. Parda deprives Muslim women of mental and moral nourishment. Being deprived of healthy social life, the process of moral degeneration must and does set in. They lag behind their sisters from other communities, cannot take part in any outdoor activity, and are weighed down by a slavish mentality and an inferiority complex. The physical and intellectual effects of parda are nothing as compared to its effects on morals." Unquote. That's Ambedkar on Islam, Muslims and Pakistan, Mr. Owaisi. Now let's delve a bit on the Jai Bheem part of the Owaisi sign-off in Parliament. When it came to leaving Hinduism because he felt persecuted as a Dalit, Ambedkar made a clear, conscious choice after due deliberation to move to an Indic faith, Buddhism. He toyed with the idea of converting to Sikhism, but gave up on realizing that even the Sikh society had hierarchies which would not easily accept a convert as an equal. Islam, despite its claimed egalitarianism, had developed its own complex class structures in India, and what riled Ambedkar most about Islam was the institutionalized othering of non-Islamic faiths, of treating followers of other religions as inferior to those who followed Islam. Similarly, in the case of Christianity, Babasaheb thought that like it failed in the case of slavery and Negroes, it would fail to ameliorate the situation of the untouchables of India. In the case of Christianity, he was also particularly concerned about the fact that an increase in Christian faith followers in India through conversions might strengthen the British rule in the country, and hence chose Buddhism. Somewhere at the back of his mind would have been influences like that of the Marathi Brahmin teacher, Krishnaji Keshav Ambedkar, who gave him his Brahmin surname, or Sharda Kabir, his Brahmin wife, who became Savita Ambedkar and provided him companionship, or the Maratha rulers of Baroda state, the Gayakwads, who provided him ample opportunity to curate his career on merits within the framework of the same Hindu society. Make your own readings on Ambedkar now.
उस दिन सनसेट देखने छज्जे पे चढ़ा, टूट गया।
हाँ, तो किसने बोला घर की दीवार पे रॉक क्लाइंबिंग करने को?
सफीना बदतमीजी।
समझ गया। मेरे पास आप दोनों की प्रॉब्लम की मेडिसिन है। इसको घर पे लगाओगे तो शादी का तो पता नहीं, पर घर पक्का नहीं टूटेगा।
रुंगटा नहीं तो घर स्ट्रॉन्ग नहीं। रुंगटा स्टील TMT बार एकदम सॉलिड।
Moving on to our last segment. There's a new darling of the global right. No, not Elon Musk. Musk was in November. This month it's Javier Milei, president of Argentina. In a press conference in the capital Buenos Aires this week, Milei announced that for the first time in the last few decades, Argentina was reporting a fiscal surplus. With this, Argentina also came out of recession the country was in for a few years. The milestone marked 1 year since Milei entered office with a promise of shock therapy to the country's ailing economy. A self-declared anarcho-capitalist, Mali's lack of government experience, unkempt hairdo, the Rolling Stones looks, and the free market missionary zeal did not inspire much confidence initially.
Redujimos los ministerios de 18 a 8. Eliminamos casi 100 secretarías y subsecretarías. Cerramos más de 200 áreas que tenían funciones duplicadas u obsoletas. Congelamos el salario de funcionarios de alto rango desde enero hasta la fecha. Cerramos Telam, que funcionaba como una agencia de propaganda kirchnerista y solo este año proyectaba una pérdida de 20.000 millones de pesos. Echamos a 34.000 empleados públicos y les estamos tomando examen de idoneidad a los demás.
A socialist cocktail of welfare programs, pricing controls, and subsidies had ruined the Argentine economy over decades. Deficits led to huge borrowing. Those borrowings led to defaults. Defaults scared investors. And the deficits also led to printing of more money, resulting in runaway inflation. The road to ruin, as always happens, was paved with good intentions of socialist politics, not unfamiliar to many nations around the world. On day one, after assuming office, Mali reduced the number of ministries from 21 to 9, abolishing the education and women and child ministries, among others. Massive job cuts were implemented as Mali set out to implement his slash and burn campaign promise. Him holding a chainsaw, signifying the deep cuts he would inflict on profligate government spending, has become an icon of modern right-wing economics these days. For example, he stopped inflation-adjusted university grants, leaving some universities struggling to keep their lights on and elevators running. He downgraded the Culture Ministry, closed the National Theatre Institute, shuttered a state-funded news agency, and defunded scientific research. Public works projects were suspended, leaving cities littered with white elephant structures and an estimated 200,000 construction workers out of jobs. Second, swimming against the global tide of de-dollarization, Mali got the dollar back as the exchange currency for Argentina. The real target of the move was to put a stop to the central bank's propensity to print the home currency peso and thus keep the fire of inflation burning. With that temptation out of sight, inflation figures are down. A year earlier, Argentina was on the verge of economic and social collapse with near 300% annual inflation, collapsing peso, and 40% of its population living below the poverty line. The road was obviously not easy. In the immediate aftermath of the expenditure cuts, job losses, and chainsaw on subsidies, inflation actually spiked. Poverty increased. People flocked to food banks and soup kitchens. Costs of public services went up, and protests erupted across the country. But Mali persisted. To be honest, it's too early to call it a mission accomplished. Argentine economy is still anemic. Half the people are still below the poverty line, and it's going to be a test of nerves. For the time being, Mali is soaking in fame under the sun. America's President-elect Donald Trump serenaded him at his Mar-a-Lago residence last fortnight. Mali claims that his slash and burn has actually inspired Trump to set up the Department of Government Efficiency, now headed by Musk, with similar objectives for the United States. Giorgia Meloni granted him with honorary citizenship of Italy last week. What are the lessons for India in the Mali experiment? Let me say this. There's a scope in India to prune government spending while we are still in control of the numbers. The debt to GDP ratio looks reasonably good. The fiscal deficit is in line with the glide path envisaged under the Fiscal Responsibility Act. The Modi government's post-COVID welfareism on food and housing subsidies seems to be not pinching much. This is the time to perhaps look at some low-hanging fruits. For example, can the three ministries of civil aviation, ports, shipping and waterways, and roads and transport and highways be clubbed together into a jumbo ministry of transportation? Maybe at some stage even railways could be merged. After all, the independent rail budget was merged with the main union budget a decade ago and nobody complained. Can the 4 ministries of power, renewable and non-renewable energy, coal and mines, and petroleum and natural gas be clubbed for synergies on India's energy security, even as we slim the public expenditure by at least 20 top bureaucrats' salaries and pensions? Can the food processing industry ministry be merged either with agriculture or industries? Can the ministries of forests, environment and climate change be clubbed with that of Jal Shakti? For the Jal Shakti ministry, the argument could be that the project of getting Har Ghar Jal is being done in mission mode. So it's more like a special purpose vehicle. In which case, the government should put a date by which the ministry should cease to exist once the project is over. All pipelines are laid and all taps running with water in each home in the country. Why have separate ministries for industries, micro, small and medium enterprises, chemicals and fertilizers, heavy industries and steel? Just merge the 5 into 1. Another 20 bureaucrats are spared from their onerous responsibilities. Actually, much more. Those are only the top. There is logic to the expansionism of ministries. One, that the mission mode principle, like it applies to the Jal Shakti ministry. And second, the political imperative of accommodating allies and political interests. Like the BJP never tries of underscoring how under the Vajpayee government, India got a ministry dedicated to tribal affairs, or how under the present Modi government, there is a dedicated ministry for Ayurveda and skill development. I guess abolishing the last one would be a good beginning. You don't need the government to upskill society. People would do it on their own. A division in the education ministry can handle whatever the skills ministry is doing in the present. If not the Modi government, I wonder who can achieve minimum government, maximum governance in India. Thanks for watching.
उस दिन सनसेट देखने छज्जे पे चढ़ा, टूट गया।
हाँ तो किसने बोला घर की दीवार पे रॉक क्लाइंबिंग करने को?
सफीना बदतमीजी।
समझ गया। मेरे पास आप दोनों की प्रॉब्लम की मेडिसिन है। इसको घर पे लगाओगे तो शादी का तो पता नहीं, पर घर पक्का नहीं टूटेगा।
रुंगटा नहीं तो घर स्ट्रॉन्ग नहीं। रुंगटा स्टील TMT बार एकदम सॉलिड।
The deadlock between the BCCI and the PCB has finally come to an end, and the ICC's efforts have finally paid off. The Champions Trophy, as confirmed by the ICC, will be played in the hybrid model. The time was running out for the ICC considering the financial implications of the marquee event. The stakeholders of the Champions Trophy were also not very happy with the ICC considering the fact that they were not being able to tap into the financial gains of such a big event. The Board of Control for Cricket in India has already made it very clear that the Indian team will not be travelling to Pakistan under any circumstances for the Champions Trophy. The Pakistan Cricket Board tried its very best to fight back in the name of national interest, but it had no answers to the issues related to the security concerns in the country.
From Asia's largest news headquarters, setting the agenda for Bharat. You're watching Republic.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi awarded Kuwait's highest honor, the Order of Mubarak Al-Kabir. PM holds bilateral talks with Emir of Kuwait. Both the countries also signed MOU aiming at strengthening India-Kuwait ties. Allu Arjun's Hyderabad house vandalized by protesters demanding money for Pushpa 2 stampede victims' family. Union Home Minister Amit Shah, who is in Tripura, hit out at left parties, claiming that left-turn Tripura into a backward state during their 35-year rule. Multi-story building collapsed in Mohali. 2 have been reported dead. Rescue operations have now concluded. And first up, we cut across to breaking news coming in. BJP MP Nishikant Dubey has claimed that the investigation into the Soros Congress link has started. BJP MP also claimed that the conspiracy to break the country with foreign funding and the real face of their supporters will be exposed. This is the latest tweet that has just come in from BJP MP Nishikant Dubey, who has once again raised the ante against the Congress, saying that an in-depth investigation is now underway into the George Soros Congress Party link. In fact, the tweet that reads, and I quote, "According to information I have received, the investigation into global knowledge of George Soros, Congress Party, Gandhi family, Rajiv Gandhi Foundation and Sam Petroda, as asked by me in the Lok Sabha, has begun. The conspiracy to break the country with foreign funding and the real face of their supporters will be exposed." Moving on, as Union Home Minister Amit Shah launched a scathing attack on the opposition, CPM and Congress in Tripura over the 2.5-decade-old Riang migrant issue, stating that the resettlement of 37,000 Ru Riang families was resolved only after the BJP came to power. Watch all the details in this report.
Home Minister Amit Shah visited rehabilitated Bru tribal village in Tripura. Shah said the central government, in association with Tripura government, has been doing its best to rehabilitate the displaced Bru families.
आज मैं त्रिपुरा ब्रू रियांग